Okay, Dennis Young here, Primitive Substance. I'm your host, Series 3, and have a special guest today, Josh Pollock, all the way out in California, guitarist
Hello,
extraordinaire, tons of records out. And Josh, thanks for coming on.
my pleasure.
So we might as well get to the gentleman we really love to talk about and love, Daevid Allen. And so let's hear about your story. I saw you play live in New York with David, the
How
University of
fun was
Heroes.
that?
That was back in the 90s, I think.
Oh
Late
man,
90s. It was a great show. Really,
thanks.
really different.
Uh,
So let's
and it
hear how
was
you met. Let's hear how you met David and go from there.
okay. Briefly, I was working at a record store in San Francisco, Reckless Records. I think the one in Chicago still exists. This one eventually ran itself into the ground. More to the point, a coworker of mine was Michael Clare, who was worshipped Daevid Allen.
Hmm.
Huge fan, was the bass player of University of Airs eventually. Before that, we were co-record store employees. I didn't really know about Gong or Daevid Allen because there's I grew up in record stores, going to record stores, working in record stores. If you happen to look in a Gong section, chances are it was Pierre Moreland's Gong, if anything. Like Daevid
Right.
Allen just did not, people just don't continue really not to know about him over here.
You're right.
Prerogative. So anyway, Michael recognized in me that I might find it interesting, and he's like,
Hmm.
turned me on to Gong. And it was one of those things where, like, he turned me on to a bunch of things. I was like, oh, that's cool, that's neat. But that was a band where I was like, holy crap, how do
Yeah.
I know about these guys? How,
Incredible.
like, yeah, I like just one of those things where, like, how is this not like huge? And
Yeah.
there's obvious reasons why it's not huge, but more to the point, like I was blown away, and Michael and David were, if not friends, at least somehow in contact. There was a day, and this is back before like phones were in pockets, where it was a day off from work. I happened to be home. The phone rang, and Michael said, "What are you doing today?" And I said,
Hmm.
"I don't actually have any plans. What do you got in mind?" And he's like, "Do you want to come and jam with Daevid Allen?"
Hmm.
And that's how it happened. As is on record, like David was pretty underwhelmed with me at first. As hard.
Yeah.
No, I like just didn't, and with good reason. Like I hadn't really done. I mean, I'd improvised, but I was just starting with a new tuning. Actually, at this weird tuning that I ended up using with David throughout playing with him. But like just a
Oh,
weird
okay.
where I didn't really like. I had reached a point as a guitar player where I had just become like utterly bored with every single thing I did. Like I just
Hmm.
and the more the fancier it was, the more like technique it required, the more boring it was to me. And I
Hmm.
had sort of a sonic youth epiphany where it's like, you know what? I'm sick of standard tuning. I'm going to find a whole new tuning, just something where I don't know what I'm doing anymore. And
Hmm.
long story short, that ended up being like one of the best things I ever did.
Yeah.
And
Well,
this,
it can change your life.
yeah, no, it completely. And now, I mean, I play in standard tuning plenty, but I spent like a good 10, 20 years not even touching it really. And that now, as a result of that, standard tuning is fresh and new and fun. But
Hmm.
for a
Yeah.
long time, I just like I needed to not know what I was doing, and that meeting, I met David sort of at the very beginning of that when I wasn't even thinking about improvising. So, I mean, the, long story short, he ended up changing his mind, and we formed a band, and that's how I met David.
Now,
And
who wrote all the songs? Did you guys improvise? How did you come up with the songs and the records that you did?
various ways, a lot of the times, and this is why it's hard for me to be like, yeah, check out those records, because what would happen a lot of the times is that we were like, what you're hearing on the record is us in the process of writing it, and
Yeah.
like, and those versions have a kind of cool wobbly charm, but also they became, I think we really finished writing them like in the next 10 gigs that we ended up playing. And then, you know, 10 gigs later, it's like, oh man, if we went back in the studio and recorded that song now, it would be a whole other story. But which is, you know, one of the reasons why I like the third album, Ugly Music for Monica, the most, is just because there was the least of that. I think there was the most actually going in with songs we had played, going in with songs that David had written, which is,
okay.
you know, everybody wanted that more than anything. I think he was in the process at that time of not wanting to write music as much and really wanted other people to do it. So, you know, like as much as we did, we could. Sometimes I succeeded, sometimes not so much.
Yeah.
He was an odd person to write for. You couldn't, not everything, I mean, you know, I don't need to tell you, he's like, you know, one of a kind. Not every, you know, the rules of songwriting that apply to most people don't necessarily apply to him in ways. You have to, like, it's a whole, it's a brand new, you know, you're stepping in a new river all the time in that regard. At least I was.
I mean, these interviews have been so indirectly related to David Allen. I think you're about the fifth or sixth interview I've had that have worked with David Allen, knew David Allen. He was such an influence on everybody.
I'm sure, I'm hoping they also told you that from time to time, he could be the biggest dick you've ever
I've seen it. I think I saw it at one of the shows. He was like really mad, like effing mad, throwing something. Yeah, but
that guy could, I mean, like, anybody that spent more than half an hour with him, you learn like 99% of the time, like he's this fount, like this superhuman fount of creative positivity and you know, and 1% of the time, like the biggest asshole you've ever dealt with. Like some people, you know, that was too much for some people, and having bared the brunt, I get it. Like it was no fun being around him at that point. But you know, the other 99% for me was that I felt, you know, I without being too hyperbolic about it, I mean, you know, I would say David had a sort of, you know, Wizard of Oz-esque kind of like, you know, I think I was kind of black and white in Kansas before I met him, and not in, you know, not in a bad way, but like I definitely feel like he unearthed the Technicolor within me. And
now, are these records, the University eras, are they available again, or are they just out of print? Or what's the story on the vinyl copies?
The story on the vinyl copy is who knows. I mean, that's the short story. I mean, it's been in the works for ages. I mean, I don't want to be pessimistic, but I would have to say I'll be pretty surprised if it sees the light of day. But I don't know what the state of the records is as far as whether they're in print or not. They've got to be around. Honestly, I would say, since I have the world's ear right now, if you were to check out anything of the University of Eras first,
what would that be?
It would be the DVD, or which I'm sure I think it's even for free on YouTube now. But the Live at the Uncon, I think that is, if ever there was a document that captured what was good about us, it was that. It's one of those, for me, it was one of those bands where, like, most of our experiences in the studio were so like short and kind of half-assed, or, you know, I mean, you know, in compromised situations. So like, I feel like if there, you know, I've heard the odd like live bit here and there where I was like, you know, the best record would be if somebody went through every live recording, especially of the last 2 or 3 tours, and picked up of that. Like, I feel like that would be like the killer argument for why our band was any good, because I you know, people enjoy the records, and I think that's great. They sound painfully tentative to me. They're tough for me.
Now, would you be able to put these out yourself, or does David's sons own the rights to these songs, or because that's always the tricky situation.
As far as the live stuff,
live or the recordings. I mean, like, say a record company came up to you and said, "I want to reissue these, that's what they do a lot of times. There's like indie
Oh,
labels that
I mean,
get a kick, just put these out. You don't usually make any money, but it's available again.
whoever's got the rights is not me. I mean, if somebody wants
Okay.
to do anything with those records and needs my approval, I will happily
It
sign off
should.
on it. It's thank you. I don't.
They're
It's not.
exciting. The music's exciting, and I saw you guys live, and it was a trip. I never saw David like that. I saw him do his solo show with the tapes. That was incredible. I think it was 1980. He just was in a little studio, a little theater, and he had tapes, and he was just solo poetry, background. I think he was with Material at that point, the New York Gong era.
Right. Right. Yeah. 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 The temptation is to continue to gush about how
Yeah,
much I admire the guy and how vast his not repertoire, but like he did so many different things and in such a
right.
cool way. Like I would not say he was an idol or a hero, but I mean, like, if ever there was like somebody I knew where it's just like, if I'm at a crossroads and not sure, it's like I would definitely consider like, what would Daevid Allen do?
Yeah,
I wouldn't necessarily do it because he was also, somewhat crazy, but for the grace of God go I.
yeah.
But
So,
it's generally a pretty good, like if David thought it was the way to go, chances are it was.
So before we move on, you did a benefit, right? For David for his surgery. That was really nice of you. Didn't you
Oh.
do a big benefit that he needed money for surgery for his
Was just the
cancer?
drone thing? Was that
Yes, with
was
Steve
it where
Hillers. Did
everybody
you do something?
contributed the drones? Oh
Yeah,
yeah. No, I was happy to contribute to that, yeah. But
that must have been something to be
that
part of
was.
that.
It was, and since we're talking about me and David, I will say, he was the first person to lose that hit me, and I actually made a record out of that. I have a
Hmm.
solo project called The Lake Millions, which is basically if it's me and a guitar, it's The Lake Millions, and it's no one else. And I did
Oh, okay.
one of the records I made, this is back when he passed, was it just so happened that I had a live gig scheduled on a college radio station in the area, like a week or so after he passed away, and that ended up being like my expression in my
Hmm.
threnody for David. Like it ended up being my expression of the grief and then like reconciliation I had with his passing, which
Oh, that's nice.
I'm not. I don't seem to do grief much. I don't. So for some reason, I don't like. I usually when people pass, it's like. I mean, unless it was like, oh my God, they got hit by a car at 13. I mean,
Right,
it's
right.
like I don't know. There's so many times at this point we hear about like, oh yeah, so and so, the great musician, passed away at like 98, and I'm like,
Yeah,
isn't that sad? And everyone's like, actually, 98's pretty good. Like
yeah. It is.
98. That's like it's hard for me to feel sad about
It
that, but
is.
I was not happy. It hit me that David was gone, and FYI, that record you can find on my Bandcamp page. It's by the Lake Millions, and it's
Okay, got to remember that.
it
We'll put
is.
that in the description. I always remember how David's death was on a Friday the 13th. That's how I always remember David's death. It's so appropriate.
Wow. Yeah, that is indeed.
I mean, when you think about it, but anyway, let's move on to some of your other music. You've done so much music. Now, before David Allen, what kind of music what bands were you in? What were you doing?
Before David? Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
like band, what kind of,
A long time
before
ago.
and after?
Well, I mean, before David, when was that? When did I meet?
90s?
90s. All right. So, like, I mean, I guess I was very much a rock guy, not like an indie rock guy, which is ironic now because to me, like, the category of indie rock is just like the most inherently dull of categories.
It is. Yeah.
Oh my God. The most like
indie
it used
rock.
to be like don't be boring rock, be indie rock. Now, like
Right.
indie rock is like the most dull music to me.
That's
There
a
are
bad
exceptions.
cliche that they use, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I don't like it.
It's
If a band
annoying.
is described as indie rock, I'm like, yeah, I'm probably not interested. But at the time, I was. I think it meant something slightly different at the time. But but I was also, I was a music nerd regardless. So I had interest in all kinds of stuff,
So that's nice.
which, although, I mean, I would say my interest is pretty narrow compared to what it is now.
I mean, most kids now, they don't know music history. They don't know any groups from the 70s, 80s, you
Yeah,
know.
or if they do, it's like because there was a movie. Like, my
Yeah,
day job, I actually teach guitar and ukulele and drum lessons to kids mostly at a grade school, and they'll ask about, like, occasionally they'll get a Queen song. They'll want to know about a Queen song, but I think it was because that movie. But
right,
like, yeah, I don't. There, I think that I personally feel like I was born at just the right age to take advantage of what the internet has to offer as far as music, uh, you know, just being there for the taking, because I have a feeling that there was a turning point, probably, late 90s, turn of the century, where, like, so much stuff became available that
right. I
like,
agree.
the culture just as en masse kind of became, instead of like, oh, what is there? It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah,
Like, just, I
it's so
think
much. It's a
people
lot
are
to absorb.
to survive, I don't
Right.
say this as a criticism. People are sort of born with a filter, like, all right, I'm just keeping everything out until I see a reason to bring it in. And, like, I feel like I'm old enough where, like, I don't have those filters. So when you say, oh my God, here's 400 Ennio Morricone soundtracks, instead of being like, oh, whoa, 400, I'm like, I am going to listen to every single one of these because
Yeah,
they're going to be
right.
amazing. And I'm going to learn so much. Like, I feel like, it's people they don't know their history, but it's not
Nope.
like, how dare they, so much as, like, I kind of don't blame them, because, like, there's so much present to sift through already that it becomes,
Right. There is.
I pity them. I know that sounds kind of that sounds negative, but, like, I wish that they didn't need all these filters to survive, because I feel like I think a lot of people are missing out on stuff they'd actually think was really cool. You know
Well,
what I mean?
there's a lot of the attention span is short, very
Yeah.
short. We're constantly distracted by the phone. Constantly, we're constantly looking. I mean, it's just force
Yeah.
of habit now with everybody, not just kids. I see grandmothers stuck to their phone.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I
It's
mean,
the way it is.
I
You
try and,
know,
I like to be free of it when I can, but, it is a
what are you
survival
gonna do?
tool.
Right?
You know,
It is.
you're really at a disadvantage if you're like, no way, I'm gonna, like, go off the grid and not have a phone. I mean, it would just be like a
It
huge
doesn't
disadvantage.
work.
But, also, I'll say, I'm not. I think the technology has its trade-offs, and I'll tell you this: if there's one big difference between me before I met David and me now, before I met David, I was worried about becoming not famous, but as a musician, successful in a way. Like, I needed to reach a level of success, and it was
Mm,
eluding me, for mostly because I didn't deserve it, but more to the point, like,
mm.
it was a huge point of anxiety. Now I
Right.
realized I didn't need success so much as I just needed to keep doing it, and I realized,
That's great. Yeah, you
in the
are.
80s and 90s, you needed to be signed to a label. You needed to have somebody
That's
behind you if
right.
you wanted to keep making records, if you wanted to keep, you know, being engaged with an audience. And now, at least, knock on wood, like, I in my where I'm sitting right now, I have the technology to make any record I want, really.
That's
Like,
right.
I don't need money, I don't need a fan base, although that'd be
Mm,
nice. And, and I realized what I wanted wasn't so much fame and success. It's just like, making art that I put into the world and get a
right.
reaction from is what is important to me. And that
That's
is
right.
what, and, maybe we're all torn apart by our phones, uh, torn around. But I also, there's many benefits as far as I'm concerned. I like that I have made records on my phone.
Mm.
I
My
have
friend
made,
has done that. I have a
yeah,
friend who's done that. He made a record on his phone.
yeah,
It
yeah.
sounds great.
Yeah, no,
It really does.
I
It sounds
worked on a
great.
score for a web series where
Yeah,
they liked this phone sketch that I had done, and then I spent hours cooking up a really well produced version of it, and they went with the phone because like I don't know, like it just somehow
that's
that ended up
great.
being the thing, So like as far as being able to not just pick up a guitar and go strum or pick up a tape recorder and record a noise. Like I can make art and put it into the world. And that is something about the future we live in that I think is fantastic because,
It is. It is. Well,
if
that's
I,
like that's like here. I'm not really worried about subscribers. I at first I was, and now it's like I just want to interview people like yourself, interesting artists, and then maybe down the road someday somebody will find this and get inspired.
and
That's what
hear
I want.
all these pearls of wisdom falling from my mouth and make the world a
Yeah,
better
it
place.
is. It is. It's
Yeah.
but it's the way it goes.
No,
So
more power to you. But yeah,
now
you
what
get
about?
like I like being able to like not depend on other people.
Yeah, well,
A
that's
lot
the
of
way to
solo.
be. Yeah, you got. I mean, because sometimes people disappoint you. I know that. I've seen that.
I mean,
That's for
there's
sure in
that,
life.
or just like I don't want to wait for I don't want to wait for people. I don't want to depend on people. I don't want to like I love working with people, but usually these days, with few exceptions, it's like where it's someone else's band, they're in charge, and they want me to be there, and
Right,
there's a hierarchy, and everyone's happy about it. That's great, but like I don't, just wait, like I don't know. I was just supposed to do a recording session with somebody and it didn't happen because of like a disagreement about money, not having anything to do with me, but other
yeah,
people entirely. And it's just like that's a situation like I don't want to be like I have been in a situation where like, oh, my I can't get to the recording session tapes that I'm
right.
because they're behind a locked door and the person that has the key is out of town or is, what those sorts of things, which like now, like I can't, I've lost all patience for that thanks to the 21st century. I have pretty much everything at my fingertips.
Oh, that's good.
Like I have made several, I'm happy to talk about a few of them. I've made several
Sure.
records right here with others, of course, but also just by myself. And, so yeah, people's, I suppose the attention spans are shorter and
Yeah.
that's, I mean, I'm sure our attention spans were shorter maybe than the people that were 20 years older than us. I mean, who knows? Like,
Right. Right.
is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. In some ways, I almost take it as a challenge because it's like that, I had a punk background, not like I was like a punker, back
Right.
in the day at CBGB's, but, that was like a big deal for me, punk rock. And like, I really like the idea of economy and succinctness and, don't take 3 seconds if you can do it in 2. I think that's a
Right. Right. Right.
value that I hold dear. So, it's a slippery slope, but on the other hand, I in trying to publicize whatever I do, I realize like, people have told me and they're right. Like you can't say, "Hey, listen to this. Check out this album. Check out this entire song." Like nobody has the patience for that online
No. No.
anymore. And I
You're
don't blame,
right.
and I don't know. I have yet to go on Instagram, and the whole reason is because like I feel like as a musician, if you're gonna do that, like you need to like kind of work it. You can't just be on Instagram
Right.
and look
You
at
get tired of that fast. You're
you need
right.
to like you need to create you need to engage and create something for Instagram, not just hey, check out this link, but here's
That's
90
right.
seconds of me playing, here's 10 seconds of me playing,
Yeah.
here's
You have
20,
to be unique on there. You have to have
and
a
I don't
unique
like
focus of what you're going to put up. I
and that
think.
is a
Otherwise,
whole yeah,
it's
that's a
just
whole other activity. And I it's hard to get motivated to do that because I feel like I already have enough to do, which I should probably tell you
let's
about.
talk about your. Let's
Yeah.
talk about some of your current projects.
All right.
Let's do that.
All right. So I can say, first of all, this isn't even available yet, really. But a current project that I'm really excited about is I have written the music for a musical, a
Oh,
new
really?
musical by a playwright, performer, pal of mine named Sean Owens, and
Okay.
he wrote the play and the lyrics, and I
Hmm.
wrote the music. And we're now
Now that's exciting.
it's done, and it's like a for real musical. There's like 16 songs or whatever. Some are very short because they're reprises. I love reprises.
Oh, wow. Now,
So there's that. There's not a whole lot more to say other than like we're now trying to
now
get
where's this going to play? Is it going to play to local theaters or?
like I said. Well, I mean, like I said, there's not a whole lot more other than it is completed. We are now in the process of. I think we've got a reading, a private reading coming up for movers and shakers. This is not an area that I like have any expertise on. So like, yeah, the next thing is we're going to figure out how to put it up and where and all that sort of thing. So there's
Now, is this just you on guitar, or you're adding also drum machines? Or
although I have done scores on just guitar, this would be. I mean, the demos that exist are pretty spare, but this would, I'd probably put together a 4 or 5 piece band. For this,
okay.
But like I said, in that it is written and it is ready to be presented to people to help us put it in the world. And there's not a whole lot more to say that other than
I'll push it on our site here. So when's that going to be out?
Again, like as soon as people, this is where like I'm not in my comfort zone because I have actually written and produced plays, but like very much in a DIY low scale way that I'm not even sure is possible anymore. This is back,
right.
20th century. But so this would require actual money and actual people with actual power. And that's where my pal Sean, who wrote the show, I think this is more his element. So once we get those ducks in a row, I'm happy to tell you more about that. But unfortunately, I'm just excited that like I've gone from let's write this to it is written.
Well, that's an accomplishment. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. I also have. Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, keep going.
The most recent record that I put out is by one of my solo projects, and I consider this my non-instrument project. It's a turntablist thing. My turntablist alter ego, DJ Female Comic Scorpion, and these are records that are made with turntables and vinyl and a sampler and maybe other doodads, but like no guitars, no instruments. And I have a record out. By the way, almost all the records I'm telling you about are on the Josh Pollock Bandcamp page, so you can find them there at a very reasonable price. And this one's called, most recent one's called Paradise Relost. It's being billed as the soundtrack to a German dance piece, but that's a lie. It's not really. And that came out, and I think it's really cool. It's a very punk rock approach to turntables, and that I don't have any of I love hip hop music and I love hip hop turntablism, but I don't have any of those skills at all. But I don't let that stop me. And I make kind of psychedelic soundtracky music, but using turntables and samplers instead of.
Now, was this done on your phone also? Were these done on your phone or?
No. I have used my phone every once. Not. There's little apps you can get like zany little music makers, and I have plugged those apps in to this particular. These things are made live, by the way. I don't even have. I don't have the instruments. I don't have those kinds of turntables in my house. These are performed live, usually at KFJC, which is a college station in the south. South. Or KCSU, also a Bay Area college station, where they'll let me come on for an hour or two and basically just jam on turntables and samplers. And then I take that, then I take it home and edit out the 90% that's terrible and make a good record.
I'm not a big fan of plugins, like synthesizer plugins. I'd rather play the instrument. Work the knobs, and I don't know.
Yeah. No, I don't. Even they've got those new little like fake turntables, and I realize most DJs use those now, but like those I have no interest in those whatsoever. Like those records you see back there are all like, I have various records, but that shelf back there, that top shelf, those are all records specifically for this project. Solo saxophone, or like bird noises, or like just drums, or like various things I combine to make, you know, new music out of. So
Are you doing
that's
are you doing any are you doing any of David's glissando guitar on any of this?
not on the DJ stuff, but I do occasionally. I work that in. You know, I don't know if you saw the at the Uncon, there were like a bunch of us doing glissando guitar all
Right,
together.
right, yeah.
I immediately realized within seconds that I was the worst of that. So like I instead, if you'll hear like low bass tones throughout that
Right.
one, I decided like, well, everyone's kind of floating up here. Like I think I'll just kind of maybe pitch shift everything down and give everything like just, you know, just I was amongst masters of that. So like I occasionally do stuff like that, but I have man, I'm in the midst amongst my many projects are like, you know, the pedals you saw me play with at any of these, like
Right, right. I remember that.
I've phased most of those out. Like I wish that I could play with David and the Universiaires now, knowing what I know now with
Yeah.
the pedals I have now, because oh my God, I could have done everything so much better. But I work on new pedals a lot that, if not the same sort of gliss thing, have similar textures to them, but aren't actually rubbing, you know, a piece of metal against the strings per se.
So what do you, to a guitarist out there listening, or what do you recommend? Like a pedal that's really interesting these days that, you know, a guitarist out there would love to maybe get.
I mean, it depends on how much what you're trying to do. I mean, like I don't buy a whole lot of new like distortions or you know, like, or echoes. Like I have like, you know, your sort of workhorse kind of like tremolos, or you know, like the ones that have been around for like dozens of years. Those I'm well stocked up on personally, and I think, you know, most guitarists probably don't need a whole lot more than those.
Right.
But these days, I'm interested in pedals that make things go crazy.
Oh, okay.
I like craziness pedals where you're like, you know, you barely even know what's gonna like come out the other end. In fact,
right.
That's literally that. It's called a tensor, and it's essentially a randomizer.
Oh, that's neat.
If you put this tensor on full, you like literally nothing you play will come out the other end. It'll be different notes at a different time signature and in different octave. Like it'll be.
That's wild. I like that.
You can dial in how random it is to very slightly to completely, and that has been something I've had a lot of fun.
And who makes that? What company makes that pedal? Who makes that?
I think it's Red Panda.
Okay.
All my most of these pedals that I'm talking about, I'm excited to tell you about this next project that I've been working
on.
Go
ahead, let's hear it.
Kilbanes, but anyway, I've been one of my favorite bands to work with is this band called the Kilbanes, who mainly have a band so they can write plays with songs in them, but are enough of a band that we can like go and play at a club.
Okay.
I'm currently working with them on some instrumental music for some interstitial pieces that they got hired to do, and they don't normally do that, so they asked me to help. All my fun pedals are across the bay in their studio right now, because I'm going to go work with them in a couple of days.
That's great. That's nice too.
Anyway, so the Kilbanes, just so I don't completely go off on any one direction, let's keep on track. Kilbanes, fabulous singers, musicians, songwriters. Started working with them, gosh, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. I've done plays with them, often just playing guitar, but there's at least one play that we called Weightless that we've done a few times, most recently in New York City, not on Broadway, but on a street called Broadway, which is close enough. Okay. It was an off-Broadway show where I also acted and sang and played lead guitar, and it was a cool show in that the band and the cast were all essentially the same, which is the way I like to do shows best. And we haven't come up with another one of those where I have a role yet, but I work with them as a musician.
Are you going to play any chance doing another play in New York like that?
Man, I hope
Never
so.
know, right?
I love New York City and I love playing there, but this was a rare and a rare opportunity. And just before I say no more about that, I have to say one of the most amazing things in my life, as far as feedback from a celebrity. After the last performance of this, we were all, at a bar around the corner going, "Hey,"
Right.
and somebody handed me their phone and said, "Did you see this?" And, on Twitter, I don't know if the name Frank Oz means anything to you, but
No.
well, did you ever watch Sesame Street?
Oh yeah, of course.
All right, well, the guy that wasn't Jim Henson, that's Frank Oz. The guy, you know how Jim Henson was
Oh
Ernie?
yeah, I know
Frank
Frank
Oz was
Oz.
Bert.
Right.
Frank Oz was the Cookie Monster. Frank Oz was, like
Oh, that's
Frank
something.
Oz was
Right.
Yoda in Star Wars. Like he's just like an actor and creative person that was near and dear. He saw the show and really liked it. That kind of hit me hard. I was just like, geez, if I'm cool with with Animal from the Muppets, then that's okay with me.
Well, you do something New York, you never know who's going to show up.
You never know.
That's what it is.
Was a pleasant surprise, at least.
Oh yeah.
Another band I'm playing a lot with these days and have played with for a long time that I also think is of the highest caliber is a band called Foxtails Brigade, based around a singer, songwriter, guitarist named Laura Weinbach, who I consider, unique as Daevid Allen in her own way. Like, absolutely nothing like Daevid Allen, but like very unique and skilled musician and singer, and a rare use of. She's a classically trained guitarist, but doesn't sound like a classical guitarist or John Fahey when she finger picks. She finger picks in a way to write songs in a way that is utterly unique, and they're great. We don't have anything new out, but I played gigs with them a lot.
How long has she been doing music? Is she kind of new to?
No. I've been playing on and off with Laura for like 15 years or so. She's been at it for a while. No, she's the real deal through and through.
I got to check her out.
I've also let's see. Oh, you might find this interesting. I recently played a gig with the Mo Staiano Ensemble. Mo used to play with Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum. Though is
right. I've heard
is a remarkable composer and percussionist in his own right, and he wrote a piece for like 11 guitars and bass and drums, and it's called Weightless. It came out as a record that is available now, but I got to perform it at in the East Bay here in California back in July, which was pretty cool.
Okay.
The one time in my life where like Fred Frith opened for me.
Okay, that's something.
Fred did an improv set, duo improv set as an opening act.
I tried to get Fred an interview with him, but he couldn't reach him. He's probably too busy.
It's it's probably for the best, and I say this with utmost love and respect. Like there was guys like Fred, and I can say this having worked with David as well. Like, and I did one gig with John Cale a long time ago.
The one and only.
One and only. And I mentioned another guy who, like, of that age group who have been interviewed and revered for ages.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's kind of weird. And it's unimaginable to me on some level, but like they kind of get sick of people loving them.
That's true.
They get sick of
true. You're right.
It's really weird. And it's like I am far from reaching that point. Let me tell you. But like, yeah, these guys, like after a while, just sort of like, these reverent questions, and they're just like, they are over it. And there was a question and answer session before this gig with Fred, and like he was very like not being on the receiving end of his like answers. He was hilarious because like it was like he was really. I mean, like even I'll give you one example. Like I just like. And this was such low-hanging fruit. I can't believe this guy. He's like, how do you know when an improvisation is over? And
that's a good question.
With the barest bit of like patience, he's like, when I stop. And that was the end of his answer. It's like, and it's like, like he's handled these sorts of questions before, so like I bet there's a degree to which you maybe like it's
Leave him
it's
alone. He's had enough interviews.
interviewing some of these people. You know who I interviewed once who was not quite like that, but who believe it or not, I've actually done a few interviews myself, not on podcasts, but an interview before I get to the one I was going to tell you.
Go
there's
ahead.
an interview with I used to work at Amoeba Records, and there's there's that thing on YouTube called What's in My Bag. And
of course. I know that.
One of the last things I did before I stopped working there was I did What's in My Bag with J.G. Thirlwell, the Fetus guy. Whom I think is amazing. So, and like, he came in, he came in shopping, and I was like, hey, I actually complimented him on I think it was the Venture Brothers soundtrack that he had just done. So we ended up doing one of those. I remember my boss going like, how did you recognize him? I'm like, have you ever seen J.G. Thirlwell? Nobody else looks like that,
No.
But I at Amoeba also for some YouTube thing, I interviewed Elvis Costello, who was
that's great.
Oh yeah, a songwriter I held in high regard, a huge, childhood hero, but like, he is notoriously like, he doesn't cut interviewers slack at all. Like,
boy,
you either keep up with him or you
forget it, right?
Go right under the wheels. And like, he did not make it easy, but I held on, and at the end, he said, "Thank you. You asked good questions." So I was like,
"Well, I'm a little nervous. I'm a little nervous because next week I'm interviewing Phil Manzanera."
Wow,
you know him, right?
I mean, I'm a huge
Roxy
fan.
Music, but I'm not going to talk about Roxy Music. I want to talk about 801 Live.
I bet he'll be happier to talk about that than Roxy.
Yeah, because I interviewed Bill McCormick. A fantastic interview. The reason I got the interview was because of Bill McCormick. Played with him.
Right. Yeah,
and Bill's a great guy. Oh. And he's also written books, and so we'll see how that goes. But you're right, Elvis. I imagine you really have to keep up, or he's gonna blow you off, right?
Especially now. I mean, this was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Talking about probably more like 15 at this point. Like he had no patience for journalists in the first place, and even when he got like maybe a little nicer, like he doesn't have he's sharp as a tack, that guy. Like he just has no, like, you keep up with him or he does not give a fuck.
You're probably right. These top stars, I'd rather talk to somebody in their band or people.
Oh yeah, work. No, sure.
That's the people you're going to get a hold of.
Yeah. I was thrilled to have the opportunity, but yeah, like it's nothing I would. Yeah. I would
so keep going. What else you have going? You got so much happening.
All right, let's see what I can fit in here before people get bored. That's did. Right. Too late. I have been playing with a songwriter named Jeffrey Luck Lucas, who's a kind of a grizzled. No reason. He might take this personally. There's no reason you would have heard of him. He's not famous, though. He's more famous than me. I mean, he's put records out before. He's about my age. And my favorite part, I mean, I like his singing and song. It's kind of a grizzled, sun-baked, desert gothic scenic singer-songwriter thing. I like the two songs we cover a lot are by Townes Van Zandt and the Velvet Underground. That might give you sort of a balance of where he's coming from. But the fun thing about this band is I have literally not rehearsed with them, not once. I played with them for a couple of years. It was one of those things where the bass player at the time was just like, Josh, you should really just come and play with this band. It was at a time I was really busy. He's like, I don't have time to learn a bunch of songs. He's like, don't bother. Just come on down. And
so you just played, right?
He was right. It was at this point in my musicianality, like they're the sorts of songs where like, I think I know where this is going. I think I know where to get loud now. I think the singing's coming. Like at this point, I've heard a lot of the songs several times, so it's a lot easier. But like, I don't. It's always different. There's a violin player as well, a guy named Jeff Hobbs, that often plays, and we get to do some like the kind of interaction I used to do a lot with David that I miss desperately, where it's not so much lead and rhythm, but like two intertwining things. And
I remember. I
go to some fun places with him on violin that I couldn't, like I occasionally got to do with David. So that's been really fun. The second most recent record I put out, this is a one-off, and this is, I've been telling you that I don't normally like to be in charge of ensembles or
Right.
having to deal with paying people. So I
Right.
actually did the exact opposite. Being a punk rock guy, I was a huge fan of the band Husker Du. I don't know to what extent
Oh,
you're
yeah, I've heard of them.
they were an influential band on me, and the Bob Mould eventually had a very
Right.
successful
Yeah.
career as kind of a punky singer-songwriter guy. The other main songwriter of the band, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, much too early, Grant Hart, was the drummer and singer-songwriter and wrote. He was the other songwriter. And I
Hmm.
loved his songs. And when he passed away, there had been talk around town like, yeah, we should get a tribute together for that guy. And it never happened. And I
Hmm.
always thought, man, I would have loved to, but I was Grant had this quality to his songwriting, and I don't know. I can prove the through line because this is what I'm about to tell you about. But there was always something a lot like the great soul of the late '60s, like Otis Redding to it. Like it had a timeless sort of like Stax Motown kind of quality to it.
Right.
And I wanted to do an album of his songs, but instead of doing it with loud blaring guitars, which is the way all Husker Du was, and
Right.
the way people cover them, I wanted to do it like a soul review, no guitars, lots of vocals, lots of horn.
Ah, that sounds great.
And so I did. This album,
Okay.
it's the band name is the Mike Stand Situation. This is also available on the Josh Pollock Bandcamp site for free. But it's a suite of 8 Grant Hart songs done in sort of in my Otis Redding filtered through, this guy. So not quite Otis Redding, but my attempt at like sort of a 60s soul review thing with Grant Hart songs, and I'm super proud of it. I also did a one-off gig where I assembled like a 4-piece horn section and like 3 vocalists for it. But anyway, that is a one-off. There's not going to be any more of those. But
Okay.
it was one of those things where like I had worked on it. I played all the instruments except the horns, which I arranged. And
Hmm.
I don't know. The only other there's a couple horn players on it, obviously. There's a female vocalist from there's a Bulgarian women's choir in the Bay Area known as Kitka. I don't know if they have, to what extent they have an international reputation, though they should. I mean, I think they're literally
Hmm.
in Russia right now. But anyway, I don't know if you know Bulgarian like folk music, but they have like those crazy interval, like
Hmm.
half tone intervals, harmonies, and so these people like can capital S sing.
Oh, that's got to be sound
Also
really interesting.
a member of that. They are a member of that collective was also a longtime Husker Du fan, so she added a whole bunch of vocals and crazy harmonies to it that I
Oh, I
arranged.
got to hear that.
The Mike Stand Situation is called Grant Hart, and yeah, you know where to
Okay.
find it. All right, I think I'm making some progress on this. Let's see.
Okay.
I have a couple other one-man. I think okay. No, I've mentioned the Lake. The Lake Millions is a thing where like it's guitar, and I've actually figured out I haven't recorded it properly yet, but it's sort of a one man. It's probably the closest thing to the University of Errors that I do
Hmm.
personally. In that, like, I figured out with loop pedals how to make my own one man psychedelic band, and I play live drums and live guitar, but I get the loops going live and then play. It's basically a one man psychedelic band, but I don't. That's still in the process of being
Is
documented.
this electronic drums that you're using?
No, like real drums.
Real drums.
Real
You have
drums.
triggers
Yeah,
on them?
I'm not a great drummer, but good enough. And here's a secret. I am on a short list of people that have played drums on a Gong album. I'm not credited, but there are a couple. The Acid Motherhood album, which is an album I
Oh,
made,
yeah, I've heard of that. Right.
is,
Heard of that.
it was not. There are people that love that record. It was a difficult record to make, but this was made in Australia in Jilly's house. Long story short, I
Hmm.
was present when Jilly and Orlando lived in the house that we were making this record in. I had flown in to Australia, to work on this. Their whole family absolutely imploded one evening, and David was banned from the
Oh
studio
boy.
for the rest of my stay. They eventually patched it up, and something was made. The record had a troubled birth. There are moments on it, but some of the moments that weren't that great were like, because of this implosion, the next day I showed up at the studio and there was nobody there except the engineer. So I was like, well, there's drums set up and they're all mic'd up, and okay, well, sheesh, and I just started. Anyway, I was hoping that those, a couple of those are on the record. I think it's Monster, something about, God, I'd have to look. Where the drums aren't that great, that's me.
Are you going to play live
on that album where like I am the drummer on that album. They didn't bother accrediting me because I told them when I left, and they had to do a whole bunch of work after I left because David was still banned from the studio. I told them, like, please replace those drums. Orlando, please go to town, do something really cool. And they didn't get around to it. So there are a couple songs in that album where I can say that I have played drums I am easily the worst drummer to have ever graced a Gone record.
Oh man! Now you should check out the interview I did with Charles Hayward.
Oh man,
Charles Hayward,
dude,
sweetest guy. Oh, great interview.
I saw This Is Not This Heat. I don't know, about a year ago, maybe, here in town. Blew my fucking head off.
He's amazing.
Oh my God, was he like? And he was on, like, as I age, you can get concerned with, like, to what extent am I a shell of my former self? Like, I hope I'm still not, because some people age well. I think David was a really good example. Geez. But like, some people do not. And I was just like, Charles Hayward, God damn.
Yeah.
I want to age like you. Like, he was on fire. And the whole bit, I almost liked it. I mean, I'm a huge This Heat fan. I almost liked it better. Like, it sounded so good. And Charles was so fiery and so inspired, man. Love that guy.
He uses a lot of pedals with his solo. He was talking about, he's got 4 pedals that he uses, and it's random, and the sweetest guy, really great guy.
I'm glad to hear that he's a great guy, because he's truly
he was.
If you
get a chance, listen to that interview.
I will.
It was really good. So keep going there. You got more to go.
I think we're getting to the let's see. Another recent release of mine that I'm really proud of is I have, as I mentioned, I have a theater background. In fact, I don't have any musical training to speak of, other than
I didn't know that.
I mean, I'm I've had plenty of help, but I'm self-taught. I've never had the few things I think I had violin lessons when I was in 1st through 3rd grade. Can't play a note. But I didn't take well to lessons, and I didn't like playing instruments until I taught myself. But anyway, I do have theater training. I actually majored in theater in college, and like, I've written a couple of plays. I've done a bunch of plays. I'm often my ace in the hole. The only plays I get cast in these days are when they need somebody, an actor, someone who can actually act and play music for real. And thankfully, I'm on kind of a short list of that around here. But yeah, I work in this sort of netherworld of acting and music a lot. And one of the things, there's a band called the Bengsons, who I think are, I'm going to sound really old when I say this. Apparently, they had a video that went viral, and now
there you go.
They've reached a level of popularity that is large. Anyway, they've also done theater stuff, and I was involved in a play of theirs, and I met on that, working on this play they did called 100 Days. The drummer, of the band. I acted a little. I was mainly the guitarist, lead guitarist. The drummer of the band is a gal named Geneva Harrison, who's, well, A, fantastic, B, like stunningly wonderful person. But we just bonded, and like we had this thing where like anytime we had free time, somehow this weird overlap we had was like we just started making up 70s TV show cop soundtrack themes. Like anytime we had a chance, we just start like suddenly we just start making up Starsky and Hutch music, and which is something I've always been a fan of. The shows themselves I can take or leave, but like there's an era of 70s cop show soundtracks that I think are, you know, really top notch. And I also am a big fan of improvising, like, you know, Ken or some of the downtown New York guys of, you know, the John Zorn School. And this sort of, we put together a band just out of these little jams that we would have called Heat, Vision, and Jack, that are essentially like, you know, fake cop show, you know, like a way to improvise within, like, you know, and the framework is like fake cop show music, you know, which we can break those things. So like the second of our albums, and it's just the two of us. Like we will jam on riffs for a while. I use loops and stuff like that, and then, you know, I'll, you know, the Can approach, the, you know, you take this huge jam and edit it down to the part that's good, and you know, make records out of that. So like a recent record I've been happy with was the most recent one we did with that, which was called 2. So yeah, you know, if you like improv and cop show soundtracks, this band is for you.
Yeah, wow, you're so diversified. You got a lot going on.
You know, and it's sort of, I'll tell you, you know, circling back to when you asked me like the difference, you know, between before David and after David, there was a time before David, and, you know, where the common wisdom was, and perhaps still remains, you know, you don't really want to spread yourself thin. Like, really, if you want to be sensible about stuff, you really need to put all your eggs in one basket, and, you know, don't get distracted. And I would do a lot of that back then and go nowhere. And, you know, so after realizing like, okay, well, I clearly, like, there's no career of any sort on the horizon. What do I want to do? And so I was like, well, what I want to do is just completely spread myself thin, because I love so many different kinds of things. You know, I'd say a seminal record for me growing up was the White Album by the Beatles, which is like a complete potpourri, a complete, you know.
It is. You're right.
It seemed perfectly natural to me that, you know, musique concrète and lullabies would literally exist right next to each other. Like,
now, were you a fan of Arthur Russell at all?
You know, him? I know who Arthur Russell is, and he's one of those guys where it's like I have yet to delve. I've only heard of, you know, cello player, from New York, died far too early, did like all sorts of different things, right?
That's what happened to him. You know, he was great at everything. Disco, punk. He also did, you know, he did concrete music and cello, but he spread himself thin. And unfortunately, now there's these musos who know him and DJs.
I love,
but he was really phenomenal.
My hero in that regard is somebody like, say, Mike Patton. The you know, I guess he's most famous for Faith No More, which is maybe the least interesting project of his as far as I'm concerned. But he could have just done stuff like that. But he's, you know, I don't know how much you know about him, but he's a music head. Like, he loves music, like all music, and he wants to do all music, and he decided, like, he's going to do anything and everything. And he's done everything from like noise, like burn your face off noise, to, he's got noise projects. He's done movie scores, like legit movie scores. He's done super pop stuff, super hip hop stuff, and like everything in between. One of my favorite bands of the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years is a band called Fantomas, which is they're almost, you know, Naked City, the John Zorn band Naked City. They're
right.
They're, if you narrow down this sounds kind of reductive, but in fact, it's kind of narrowed down Naked City to only maybe like the metal aspects and the Carl Stalling aspects. Like that's what Fantomas are. It's almost like if Carl Stalling, the great, cartoon composer from Warner Brothers,
Right.
had grown up and wanted to like compose for a metal band, that's what Fantomas is. And
Oh, I got to check that out.
yeah, it's Dave Lombardo from Slayer, Trevor Dunn from Mr. Bungle, and the King Buzzo from the Melvins. So it's just like, a whole bunch of guys who are very, very serious about what they do. And like the first album, there's lots of vocals, no words. It's all like composed, finite, weird little, like each one is like a page of a comic book, but played by the most badass metal band you could possibly. Anyway, that's one.
I gotta check that out.
Literally, like he has a label he formed just for all this stuff called Ipecac Records, and like his stuff is all over the map. If it's a Mike Patton project, you don't know what you're going to get, and it could be anywhere.
I love that. Wow, I got to check him out. I only knew him. I only knew him from Faith No More. That's it.
And I mean, no disrespect to Faith No More, they're okay. I'm not like that. To me is like the least interesting aspect of his career. Mark Ribot, another guy that's similar. Like he, perhaps my guitar hero if I had to pick anybody, and he's worked with everyone from John Zorn to Robert Plant. Like I've seen him. Do you know what I'm talking about? Mark Ribot.
Yeah.
I mean,
I remember.
He's played with Tom Waits. That's probably, but he's done stuff on his own. Everything from like Latin stuff to noise. I've seen him play with McCoy Tyner.
I didn't know that.
Go down with McCoy Tyner, and he wasn't even like,
oh my
hey,
gosh.
I'm gonna take, like he was, if anything, like super traditionally. Like he'd sound like, so like a guy like these guys, they like, it's like food, like I don't want to just eat steak. I don't want to just
they're an inspiration to you, which is
like, and I want to eat lots of food, so
I think David had really made a big impression on you to go for it and keep experimenting.
He definitely encouraged me to like let my freak flag fly. That's for sure. But also just like, just like I don't. I mean, the difference, of course, between all these people I just mentioned and me, as pointed out by Bambi, is like, well, those guys are famous, so they can actually get away with it. I can, thanks to 21st century technology, I can do it too. I can make all the records I want. I can put them out there. I can publicize them to the best of my ability. I'd love to learn to be better at that, but still, and there's just I passionately spread myself thin because there's just so many things I want to do, and I'd rather do them all and confuse people than be sensible.
I like that. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Keep confusing people. You don't know what's next.
Yeah. I would say one last thing I could.
Sure.
No, I'm sorry. This is, I don't know to what. Do you know who Jandek is? Like the very. This means nothing to you probably. Jandek is a very. He was a reclusive, eccentric singer-songwriter, and that only recently started playing. Like, I guess recently, it's been 20 years or so. For 20, 30 years, nobody knew who he was, and he just put out these weird, seemingly tuneless records that I found fascinating. He eventually started playing gigs, and I am on a Jandek record, so that kind of thrilled me. That's one thing. I have. I would say if I were to touch on one last thing, I like to do scores myself. I haven't done too many recently, but I have done scores. I have if you go to the Bandcamp page, there's Josh Pollock, Music for Film and Theater, volumes 1, 2, and 3. Various things I've done for anything from films to web series to shorts to theater pieces. Not amongst that series. One, I mentioned the Lake Millions. I did one of the confluences of theater and music I did back in, I guess, 2018 was there. The Cal Shakes. There's a local Shakespeare company. Did this mammoth combination of several of 4 Shakespeare plays crammed together in one huge play called The War of the Roses. And I played several messengers and lackeys. Point, the Lake Millions, i.e. me on the weird tuning I played with David. I did the live soundtrack to the show every night, like out in an arena, not an arena, but an amphitheater in out in nature, you know, surrounded by trees and mountains.
Oh, that must have been something.
So like, you know, I composed and performed a live score for this 4-hour Shakespeare play we did. Yeah, it was not easy, but yeah. So that was, you know, I'm a huge soundtrack nerd.
Okay.
And so I have listened to, you know, hundreds. I've listened to hundreds of Ennio Morricone soundtracks alone.
You're gonna love this. I didn't realize it. I just interviewed Ray Russell. Ray Russell did all the James Bond soundtracks.
No way.
He played guitar on all those sounds.
Like that's.
Yeah.
Dang.
Isn't that something?
I'll check in on that one, man. That sounds amazing. Yeah.
I never realized it. And I just interviewed him the other day. I said, well, he's done guitar. He's a British guitarist. And oh yeah, I did all the James Bond. He did Life with Brian. He was on that record too, playing guitar. He showed me the guitar.
Well, I'm a huge Monty Python fan. So like just between like I already worship this guy. I will definitely do
and just casually he said, oh yeah, they recorded at Abbey Road. George Martin was producing it, big orchestra. And he goes, yeah, we're in the canteen with all these famous people. You know, Live and Let Die, he was on with Paul McCartney. I could not believe it. Check him out, Ray Russell.
Hearing this guy's story, that those are
so you like soundtracks? I was like,
oh yeah, and like Live and Let Die is like, you know, there was, you know, people knock Paul McCartney, man, but there was this era.
They're forgotten.
Those songs are great, and like
need a voice, you know.
Yeah, that song, like I love that. Like there was a time when a hit pop song could have like a whole other secret song inside it, you know, like there's that whole middle part where suddenly like you're James Bond for a second, like chasing people through, you know, like.
Everybody knows the James Bond theme. All the old TV shows had great soundtracks. Oh yeah. I don't know.
Here and there. You know, every once in a while I find like new people. I'll tell you who I'm excited about. Who's a new guy? Jerskin Fendrix. Poor Things. There was a movie that came out last year called Poor Things. Not for everybody, but I'd say like it was a real game changer of a soundtrack. Like the score to that movie was unlike any score I'd ever heard before. Like almost no reference point less, not pointless.
Wow.
Like in fact, I think that in the discussions for the film, the director the director told him like, don't listen to anything. I don't want you to like listen to anything or watch any movies. I don't want this to be like. I literally just don't want it to be like any other score. And it's both very effective as a score and they succeeded. It's literally like I was like, I'm gonna listen to anything this weirdo does. This guy's amazing.
And what's his name? Justin? What's his name again?
It's
Justin.
It's all right. It's clearly not a real name. But I mean, by real, it's clear. I mean, I doubt his parents named him Jerskin, but it's Jerskin Fendrix.
Okay.
Like Hendrix, but with an F instead of an H. Jerskin.
I gotta check him out.
Yeah, he's also. I think he's also got he's got one eccentric pop album out on Bandcamp, and that's it. And then he's done a couple scores, both of which are great. But I'm just like, you know, it was a rare time when it's like it didn't just sound like recycled garbage. We're like, this is so, like bracingly exciting and brand new. So yeah, you know, I try and keep feelers out for new stuff. It's hard as a crusty old man because it's like you have to sift through a lot of like, you know, like where it's like, you know, if you had listened to music from 40 years ago, you know that several people have done this already, and like this isn't really a new version of it. It's actually kind of watered down. But there, you know, I think Jerskin Fendrix and people like him make the searching pay off.
I gotta check him out. Well, Josh, you're a wealth of information, a wealth of talent, and a wealth of projects. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean,
thank you for doing this.
Oh,
I
my
mean,
pleasure, man. I hope I didn't just ramble on, because I you know
no,
that's
no,
I do
no,
is like he's got to ask me about the stuff. I usually when people, hey Josh, what are you doing? I'm like, nothing. How about you? Because it's just like
nothing, right?
I
No,
don't even start.
I just
Like,
got like this,
you
this,
know,
this,
like where do
this.
you start? You know, like either I do something like this where I rattle on for days, or I just be
Well,
like, same old, same old.
but the
So like
thing
I
is,
appreciate you listening.
you've got the theater aspect of this that really is intriguing. You come
Uh,
from a theater background, then you get involved with David Allen of all people, right? So
he
you've got
he was a
that
big fan of
experimental.
the theater background, I have to say.
Yeah,
Like the fact that I had the theater background was a huge aspect of what maybe like won him over.
yeah. Now,
Because
what I need you to do is send me like what you want me to post a description because there's so much we talked about, but the list of records, how people can get them, because I
description.
want people to get your music. I
Okay,
want people to find it.
that I will happily help you out with. But as far as
Great.
as far as a description, I'm just like I because somebody had asked me this before. Like I guess if I had one overarching thing is that I consider myself like at best an art facilitator, whether I
Okay.
whether I'm or and maybe more specifically a music facilitator, like whether that involves me starting it or finishing something that someone else, you know what I mean? Like how whatever the situation is, how best can I
Yeah.
facilitate this, regardless of what instrument I'm playing or what my role is, like that is the overarching, like, you
Yeah.
know, I mean that's probably a no-brainer really, but it's like whatever the situation is, how can I make this as awesome as possible, without like
Because
getting my
Yeah,
ego
because
in
I
the way.
was I was surprised. I thought, well, maybe we'll talk about 20 minutes, David Allen, and then that's it. Nice talking to you, but this has been great. You
Yeah,
never
sorry,
know, and and,
I
and
gotta
you've got some great stuff. No, it's fine. Thanks for rambling on. I mean, there's so much information, and I want you to get it out to people that they know who
thanks
you
for
are. It's important,
I will.
at least for me
Well, I
and everybody
small eye
listening.
important maybe, but
Because
much
I have real
appreciated.
list. I think I have real musos watching this, so they're
Hopefully, one or
interested in
two might
music.
agree. That'd be great. But yeah,
So
and thank you for giving me this opportunity to
sure,
ramble on this.
absolutely, and keep the music going. And thank
Oh, yeah.
you. Have a great day now.
You too, man. Take
Yeah,
care.
go ahead.
Oh, I mean, sounds like you were wrapping up. So